29 Honda Recon. We fixing to do the top end on it today. We got to take off the gas tank. We got to take off the air cleaner, carburetor, and the little heat cover that's underneath the gas tank to be able to get to it. We got to take the 2 bolts out that hold the gas tank on. It looks like a 10mm. I like to keep the parts in a bag, in a little sandwich bag, like the screws, and I like to write on them what they're for. That way I don't have to worry about chasing down screws or anything like that. But anyway, get back to it. I've got the bolts out of the gas tank, the cover off of it. Now I need to remove the fuel line from the carburetor to be able to remove the tank. Okay, gas tank is off. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take off this bracket and this heat shield. Shouldn't take but a second. So when you have a big part with a few bolts or nuts, what you can do is take a zip tie, puncture a hole through the bag, run it through the bracket. That way they stay together. I'm going to do that right now. And that's how they stay together. That's the heat shield and bolts. Okay, now we're going to get the carburetor off. I'm also going to do a little video on how to clean these carburetors, and there's a choke lever spring on here that if you take the bracket off, say maybe your top part of that bracket for your choke lever spring, is the screw is stripped out, and you say, well, I'll just take off the whole bracket. Well, that'll work, but the problem is you're going to have a spring that comes off, and I haven't seen a lot of videos explaining how that spring goes back on, but I'm going to do that. Let me get this carburetor off. 2 10mm bolts. They just mounts right here. It's real easy to get off. Taking the choke lever, not the choke lever, the throttle lever plunger out. Everything looks good. This will only go in one way, by the way. If you ever install one and when you crank it up, it just revs real high, you probably reinstalled this the wrong way. Done it. See that right there? I don't know if you can see that, but this is the choke lever. This is the choke lever spring. If you notice, the little small short end is sticking out towards the plastic clip, and there's a longer version that has a post right there, and that spring rides up against that. So if you can't get this spring off to take the choke lever spring out, and you take that whole bracket off, that spring is going to come loose. So you don't want to do that, or you want to pay attention to how it goes back on. Next, we're going to work on getting this exhaust off. It's 2 12mm bolts, I believe. I think, yep, 12mm bolts. See you in a minute. There's 2 nuts holding the exhaust on by the wheel on the right side. You need to remove those so you can remove the pipe. And now your exhaust is loose, and now you can pull the head or the valve cover if you want to adjust the valves before you pull the head. Anyway, I'll get back to you. Okay, now we're going to take the rocker arm cover off so we can get to the 2 head bolts. Well, they're nuts. Well, these, I'm going to take these 2 head nuts off, head bolt nuts, and these 2 nuts, and that's going to allow us to pull the assembly off. Sometimes you have to work these bolts back and forth. Like, some come out easy, but some feel like they're about to break. So you just need to take your time so you don't have to do so much extra work getting a broke stud off or broke bolt out, and possibly having to re-thread it by the time you finish getting it out. Just takes a lot of time, so you might as well take the time and just work the bolt out slow. That way you don't have to do all that. hopefully. That's the bolt that was trying to break. It's a 6mm by 1 thread pitch, and I think it's a 100mm bolt. I was able to save it by spray lube and working it back and forth. Looks like there's a little corrosion on it, but okay, we just got the 4 nuts off that hold the head down, and we're going to raise this up. There's 4 washers that go with those nuts, by the way. You want to make sure that you get those and don't lose those. Get those in the bag with the nuts. And we can get the head off now. Alright, and that is the head. Well, it looks remarkably clean. Not a whole lot of corrosion, there's a little bit, but clean that up and put some new valve stem seals on it. And we'll go from there. Everything looks so clean. Even the head gasket, it looks like I could reuse it. These are your push rods. You want to make sure that those go in properly and are underneath the rocker arm pivot holes that they sit in when you put it back together. I don't know if you're going to be able to see what I'm doing or not, but I pried the little clip out with a little pick. Make sure you put a towel down there so you don't drop anything in there when you're doing this. But anyway, those clips hold that piston. Hold that. So now you have that little clip off. You can get this piston off by sliding this little rod out. And I'll show you what that looks like. So as you can see, there's a rod in there. This one's kind of tough to get off. Just got to wiggle it out. I do have a replacement piston and cylinder, so I ain't real worried about keeping that clean. But anyway, it was smoking a little bit. This engine wasn't doing too bad, but I figured it was time to do it. It's the factory piston. It's pretty clean. This engine was tight, no slack. Very little slack side to side, but none up and down. None, absolutely none, which is great. I'm gonna keep this still in good shape. Something else real quick. The IN stands for intake, so this is always going to go to your intake side. Alright, this is the kit that I'm going to be installing. It's got the head gasket and the base gasket. Let's see what else. New valve stem seals, which we will install. New set of rings. New spark plug. And of course the cylinder. And piston. And the pin. That's the pin, the new pin. That's the keepers. It's pretty sturdy. This is off-brand. This isn't like this is cheaper than niche. I mean, this is, but I've used them before and they work good. I mean, they're sturdy quality. The piston looks kind of cheap, but I mean, it's functional. It does what it needs to do. Yeah, pretty clean. It's got the little oilers. I mean, they do it pretty right. See the oil rings, the holes. I mean, it's built right. But anyway, this is where we're going to install in a few minutes. Got to clean the old gasket material off of the base before I can install the new base gasket. Okay, we got the rings on, and the thing with the rings is you want them to be spaced. You don't want to be the gaps in the rings lined up. You want them all to be apart from each other. See, like I got that one right there. I got this one right here. And of course the rings right here and right here, the oil ring. So that's all you really want to make sure you're getting done. You want to make sure that there's space so they can not leak by oil or compression. Okay, we have the new piston on with the rings. You just want to make sure that your clips, when they go in, that they snap in, and you want to make sure that you have a towel underneath here before you start trying to put those clips in that hold the pin in. But anyway, that's done. Now I'm about to clean the old gasket material off of the base so the new gasket will mount up. I'm going to use a razor blade to do that. Shouldn't take too long. It's coming off pretty easy. But anyway, that's what's going on. Okay, I got the base clean. Got the old gasket material off, and I'm gonna put a light coat of black, ultra black silicone, just a very light thin coat just to hold the gasket down. But I want to show you that this gasket can only go on one way. If you install this gasket improperly, you'll leak oil out of the side of your engine. If you notice, you have the bolt with the dowel pin, a little bit bigger hole, and then you got the oil passage right there. So this gasket can only go on one way. You want to make sure you put that on properly. You don't have no troubles with that. Anyway, let me get that mounted and we'll continue. Okay, I've got the valve springs off. I got the new valve stems on. Checked the valves, make sure they wasn't bent. They were bent. Cleaned it up, polished it. And I don't know if you can see it good, but polished them up, lapped them, put the new valve stems on. Now I have to put the springs back on. These have dual springs. It's got an inner spring and an outer spring. And then of course the cap, which is this. You need this tool to compress it against the valve, to push it down, to be able to reinstall these keepers. I don't know if you can see those, but you got two, one on each side. The narrower side, or the skinnier side, goes down like that. Makes like a V. But anyway, I'm about to put these keepers back on and then put the housing back together, put the rockers back on and mount it to the engine. Okay, so we got the head, the cylinder on with the head gasket down. The gasket only go one way. You can only put it one way. You'll notice the tab sticking right there. That needs to be facing. It's got a pattern on the cylinder itself, so you can't really mess that up. Just make sure the gasket matches. Make sure you got your dowel pins in. I got one on the cylinder and I got one on the head that's going to go into this. But anyway, I'm going to get the head mounted back up and let's see what happens. Don't forget to put your push rods back in. I marked them left and right so I'd know which ones are which, but I mean they're identical. I've looked, they're identical. Okay, we got the head back on. We're going to reuse this gasket since the kit didn't come with the gasket, and we're going to torque these head nuts down to 22 pounds, the rocker arm bolt to 22, and this one to 12. I'll be right back. Okay, we're going to torque these in a crisscross pattern We're just gonna kind of halfway snug them down, and then we're gonna finish them off. All right, so now we can go ahead and finish the torque. Go back and check these. All right, torque this one to 22 also. All right, and we're going to do this one. We're going to change the socket, but we're going to do this one to 12. All right, we got everything torqued down, and now we're going to put the carburetor on, put the valve cover on, put the carburetor on, and temporarily hook the gas to it and make sure it's running all right. Okay, we got the carburetor hooked up, we got the valve cover back on, everything torqued down. We're going to put the exhaust back on, and then we're going to hook some gas to it and see what happens. We do have the throttle lever plunger back in, and we're going to put the 2 bolts that are in the back under here. We're going to hang it back up, and then we'll hook gas to it and fire it up. Be back in a minute. All right, we got the carburetor hooked up, the exhaust hooked up. Now we're fixing to try to start it. Started running good. That's just oil burning off. Gas dripping down. I don't have the clamp on. Alright, well that'll do it for this video. Appreciate you watching. I'm going to be doing more videos, like I'm going to do the carburetor rebuild video, and anything else I can find to work on. I have an old Kawasaki Bayou 220 I want to redo. But anyway, thanks for watching.